2.5 years ago, it looked like this player's career may have been over. After an altercation during Louisville in 2019, the subject of today's video received a ton of backlash and honestly could have been kicked off the team. Thankfully, that did not happen though, and he went from a guy who was in the doghouse to someone who could go in the top 15 of the 2022 NFL Draft. He is seen as a prospect with an extremely high ceiling, and that is honestly how it always was supposed to be for him. In today's video, we're going to talk about how this guy saved his career, his entire journey to this point, and my friend Jackson is going to come on the channel and talk about his potential impact in the NFL. But before we can get into today's video, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we are on the road to 100K, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button for the algorithm, and let me know what prospect I can do in my next video. Now, let's get started. So you're probably wondering who the subject of today's video is, and it is Clemson corner Andrew Booth Jr. But in order to understand how he almost threw his career away, we need to go back in time. Andrew Booth was big enough at 7 years old that he actually started playing football as a lineman. That time was extremely brief though, as he was needed elsewhere. Andrew grew up in the Peach State alongside his twin sister Alicia, and in fact, they were 2 of 8 family members. They both loved to compete and play football, and that's why when Andrew became a star at Archer High School, Alicia also played football. She played for the flag football team, and both twins always cheered each other on, and they got along so well because of all the time they had spent together. They had been best friends since childhood, and neither of them could even imagine living without each other, and that becomes extremely important later. They always tried to outdo each other in both athletics and academics, and Andrew honestly admitted that Alicia won most of the time. Honestly, he was not always a big-time prospect though. When he entered high school, he was only 5'5". That is not 5-star status. Then he grew about 6 inches in 1 year, but when he was smaller, it motivated him. He said, quote, "That's just another thing that keeps me hungry. I was that 5'4" kid fighting for a position on a 9th grade team. That's just what keeps me hungry and humble. It gave me a lot of fuel." Booth had primarily played quarterback when he arrived at Archer High School, but with that growth spurt, he made a switch. He said, quote, "I was trying to play quarterback, but I was only 5'5" and 120 pounds. I couldn't even see over the line, so they changed me to cornerback, and it was honestly for the greater good. If I was still trying to play quarterback, I don't know how that would have gone." So yeah, now he became a bigger time prospect, so how does recruitment go? There were 3 schools that stood out. He said, quote, "I grew up a fan of Alabama and Clemson. I've watched a lot of their games. I just like how they play, the players that have played there, and I've liked watching them for a while. Now I would say Clemson and South Carolina stand out the most. I have good relationships with the coaches at South Carolina, and I like the family feel there." So yeah, he became a human highlight reel in high school, played well at camps, and earned trust amongst many college scouts. His time was coming. He was blowing up, but 1 week in late July of 2017 helped push Booth into elite status as he added offers from Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia in literally a 3-day span. He was shocked. He said, quote, "Those offers that I got last week came as a big surprise because of the timing. I really thought those schools would offer me, but I thought it would come in the future. I camped at Alabama and Clemson this summer, but I took a visit to Georgia recently, so I knew all 3 schools were interested in me. One after another definitely came as a surprise to me though." He had earned all those offers, and eventually it would come down to 2 schools, Clemson and Auburn. It was also worth mentioning that many thought he would go to where his twin sister would go, as I previously mentioned earlier in the video. Alicia went with Andrew on all his college visits, but eventually it looked like she was going to stay home and play for Georgia, and they were not amongst the final 2 schools for him. He eventually chose Clemson over dozens of offers and was going to join an elite defense with a program that had a good track record for defensive backs. But why else did he go there? He said, quote, "Like I say all the time when people ask, they do the right things uncommonly. They're just different. It's very genuine. There's no other place like Clemson." So according to scouts, Booth had a combination of production, physical measurements, and swag, and he knew exactly what he was capable of. He said himself, "College coaches just like my swag and how I play the position. I don't play it like any other corner. We play different. I step out different. I'm not afraid of anybody but God, of course, and it's that confidence I step out with every single night. That's my personality, that's my physicality, that's how I play the defensive back position." This guy was good, and he was confident, and he was also a 5-star. According to 24/7 Sports, Booth was a 5-star recruit, the number 2 corner, and the 23rd best player in the class of 2019. This guy was elite and was on track to going to the NFL, but how did his time at Clemson go? So when he arrived at Clemson, he was definitely buried on the depth chart. He'd ended up having 4 total tackles without really much of an impact, except he was in the news. In a game against Louisville in 2019, they had punted the ball, but Booth would decide to pin a player to the ground and punch him into the face. The Louisville home crowd erupted into absolute hysteria, and people were screaming at this guy. His family was there to watch the game, and after the incident, Andrew texted his mother, quote, "You guys take off those jerseys so no one will mess with you." Before the play could even be reviewed, Coach Dabo Swinney sent him to the locker room, and Booth's football career was in jeopardy. It was a boneheaded decision, and this could have been the end of it all, but he would have an opportunity to redeem himself. Dabo knew this was not characteristic of Booth, so he told him to ride the bus back to Clemson instead of the plane, and he'd have plenty of time to think about it. So what would happen? Booth responded by saying, quote, "The devil can swoop in so fast and be in and out. He can embarrass you for that moment in time and then just leave. As soon as I got off the ground, I was like, what do I do? I couldn't believe I blacked out like that." So from the comment, it seems he was 100% guilty and just lost his cool and did not make any excuses, and it seemed he was also remorseful. So he was now seen as a villain, but how would he change that narrative? He'd become a star. Over the next 2 years, he'd start multiple games, and each season would get a little bit better than the one prior. In 2020, he finished with 27 tackles, with 1 sack and 2 interceptions, but his pick against Virginia was one of the best plays of the 2020 season. Because of that, in the summer going into this year, he was seen as a first-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, and now he just have to live up to that hype. Despite Clemson getting off to a pretty slow start in 2021, he had a pretty good year. He finished with 37 total tackles, with 5 pass deflections and 3 interceptions. Those numbers were good enough to make him a first-team All-ACC selection, and he was seen as one of the top ball-hawking players in the nation. His combination of athleticism, production, and potential have led many to believe he will be a first-round pick. Now, let's turn it over to Jackson from his channel to talk about his NFL potential.
Thank you, Scott. And it is that great time of year where our worlds collide, where your college football players transition into the league that I cover, the NFL. And I'm very excited that this is the first person that we're going to be covering together, because Andrew Booth Jr. is an excellent corner who you should see taken in the late first or early second round for a lot of good reasons. The 6 foot, 200 pound, 1-year starter out of Clemson has a lot of things that will translate very well to the next level. And even though he's 6 foot, it seems like he could touch the top of the backboard just standing up with his lengthy extendo gadget looking arm. That is the first thing we're going to talk about with his game, because he uses every inch to be one of the rangiest DBs in this year's draft class. And when the ball is in the air, he has great ability to go up, track it, and knock it away. And I did mention earlier that he is a 1-year starter, so he is lacking quality game reps that a lot of other 3 to 4-year starting corners have. But what I noticed when watching him is he has great football instincts and knowledge, and even more rarely from the corner position, a very aggressive football mindset. When we think of corners, we think of finesse and technique and quick twitch muscles, shadowing the opposing team's receivers on their routes, and leaving the tackling duties to almost every other position on the field, i.e. the defensive line, linebackers, safeties. And if a corner makes a tackle, it's an added bonus, but it's not always expected. They're taught to funnel in the runner to the middle to get swallowed up by the other pursuing tacklers. But not Andrew. Probably the thing that most stuck out to me most in his film is his ability and willingness to be a part of the run defense, and his aggression in the wide receiver screen game, which is becoming a lot more prevalent in today's NFL. He had multiple tackles for loss, and even in soft zone coverage, he had the awareness to sniff out a screen, come in very fast but also under control to get low and make a tackle for minimal or no gain. When we think of corners like Jalen Ramsey, who love to come up and hit people from the corner position, but it's also one of my biggest critiques in my film analysis on rookie corner Patrick Surtain, who had an exceptional first year, but this is what I'd really like to see him improve on going into next season. But when it comes to Booth in the passing game, there's a lot to like, but also some reasons why he's flirting around the top 5 best corners in the draft and not a definite top 3 guy. But let's start with the positive. I think he is going to play very well in most systems in the NFL with his ability to play both man and zone coverages. I was always more impressed with him when he was in zone, when he was able to sit back and read the whole field and use his instincts and football knowledge to get a better read on what route concepts might be coming his way. And he is much better coming off his breaks from a back pedal to break on the ball rather being hip to hip with a wide receiver. And being a sure tackler when the offensive scheme is to hit short and quick, make one-man miss, and be on your way, he is going to be a huge asset in that department. But he is more likely to get beat on a double move and press man more than anything else. Even though he had a very good jam at the line because of the strength he has and his aggressiveness, where his weakness would show is right after that point if the receiver is able to get a semi-clean release off the line. This is what separates him from a guy like Derek Stingley, the corner out of LSU, who is more than likely going to be a travel press man corner at the next level. So I can see a perfect fit for him being the Lions with the 34th overall selection to help shore up their secondary, or the Cardinals in the second round for sure if he's still there at 55 for some reason, to help up their back end, which was a clear weakness at the corner position. And they might even go up and get him into their first round pick at number 23, but I might even recommend the 49ers trading up in their second round to go up and get him, because I think he would be perfect for their system to help defend against the pass-heavy NFC West teams. But that's what I think about Andrew Booth Jr. Thank you so much, Scott, for having me on the channel. It is always a pleasure. And if you already haven't subscribed to Scott's channel at this point, what are we even doing? This is the best place on YouTube to get an insane amount of college football content like this. So make the best decision you've made today and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thank you for having me on the channel. I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thanks as always, Jackson. To recap, today we talked about the story of Andrew Booth, how he went from his career almost being over to a first round pick, and then you obviously heard about his NFL potential. But I want to get your opinion now. What do you guys think of Andrew Booth? Who is your favorite player in the 2022 NFL Draft? And who should I do in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, subscribe to both my channel and Jackson's channel, and check out all my other NFL Draft prospect videos and everything else on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.